So hello everyone and welcome to today's InsideLocal webinar. The title of today's webinar is Local Search Ranking Factors, a Panel Debate. We're really delighted to be back here for this, which is the 6th webinar in the InsideLocal series. We took a few weeks break after the last round of webinars to draw breath, take stock, to kind of analyse what we've done well and maybe not done quite so well, and really to kind of plan for this next phase. A really big thank you on behalf of Linda, myself, and all of our kind of 4 esteemed panelists, to all of you for kind of taking the time out of your busy day to join us. We've had over 950 registrations for this webinar, which is the most we've had for any of our webinars to date, which is great. So hopefully people are finding it really valuable, really useful, it's gaining in reputation, and hopefully becoming a really kind of valuable resource to everyone out there in the kind of SEO land. Today's session is a little bit different from the previous formats we've had in that it's a panel event, with the main focus on a Q&A rather than a kind of structured presentation. We do have one short presentation to kick us off, which I'll be kind of leading us through, and then we'll dive headlong into the kind of Q&A, which will make up the bulk of the session today. We have 4 extremely experienced, extremely knowledgeable panelists who I'm delighted to have with us, and I'm really looking forward to kind of learning from their knowledge and also their kind of unique experiences and what kind of insights they can bring to us and share with us today. I'm going to give them a kind of formal introduction in a second, but I just want to run through a few things so you know what to expect today and also know a little bit about what is expected of you. So I'm just going to click onto the agenda. There are kind of 4 parts to today's agenda. The first part is understanding some historical and recent displays and algo changes. Then it comes the main Q&A bit, which is kind of debate and compare the key ranking signals, and that's actually where we'll spend almost 80%, 90% of the webinar on that section. Then 2 little small sections to follow up. One is looking at SEO strategy, asking our panelists to explain any differences they have between optimizing for new businesses or established businesses and how they might focus on different ranking factors depending on the type of business they're working with, and then also some kind of crystal ball gazing. 2014, what predictions could we expect for ranking factors and local SEO? Some housekeeping stuff. Obviously, I said it's going to be a live Q&A, but there's also a chat Q&A, and hopefully everyone has managed to locate their chat modules or rather their question modules in the kind of GoToWebinar control panel. We've got Linda and Colin helping us today answering questions. So any questions you've got, please fire them through to there, and we'll be sure to try and answer as many as possible. We do have, like I said, a lot of people registered for this event, so we may not be able to answer everyone's questions, but we will try to do our best. The webinar is being recorded. The webinar recording will be edited probably tomorrow over the weekend, and then will be available on Monday, and we'll send everyone an email round. There's no webcam view today. Unfortunately, it's just a slide deck and our voices. The slide deck itself will be available on slideshare.net. In fact, it is already up there for you to download straight away, and you'll get follow-up emails from us, probably one tomorrow and then one on Monday, giving you links through to the webinar recording and also to where you can get the slide deck from. We're also running some polls. We're going to run 3 polls, and these are basically little mini surveys where we want to kind of understand or ask, put questions to our attendees. Hopefully we'll have sort of 500 plus marketeers, SEOs and SMBs on the webinar. We want to understand how you're seeing some of these changes affecting you, so that we can kind of counter that against what the experiences and observations of our 4 kind of expert panelists are. And once we've kind of got the answers to those, we put them into some charts, and once the Q&A is over, we'll present those results back to you. So we'll get really quick turnaround on the answers to those polls, and you can see how other people, other kind of peers in the SEO world are faring, how people are trying to changing strategy, for example, and how that might stack up against kind of what you're seeing and what you're doing. So hopefully that'll be really useful to get kind of decent set of responses back and a decent sample size. So the speakers that we have today, like I said, we have 4 excellent speakers. The first is Mr. Andrew Shotland. Andrew has joined us on a previous InsideLocal before. He's got excellent knowledge of local search, very kind of unrivaled by most people out there. He has extensive experience working with IYPs and also as a local search consultant. He's a prolific blogger, and his 2 blogs are localseoguide.com and also applemaxmarketing.com, and he's a contributor to the annual Local Search Ranking Factors survey. Secondly, we have Mike Ramsey. Mike runs a successful local search agency called Nifty Marketing, based in Burley, Idaho. Mike's a regular speaker at SMX and is also part of the Local U team who run the Local U training events. He also contributes to the Local Search Ranking Factors survey. Then we have Mr. Dev Basu. We actually had to go north to track down Dev. He's based in Toronto, and he runs a specialist multilingual search agency called Powered by Search. Dev is also a contributor to the local search ranking factors and has been since inception. So he's seen it all and he's commented on it all. I only had the pleasure of talking to Dev for the first time yesterday, but he has been on my radar for a number of years to kind of get to know. So it's great to have him with us, and we do appreciate him sharing his time and his expertise. And then we also have Phil Rozek. So for many of our listeners, Phil needs no introduction. It's the third time he's been on Inside Local. He's our go-to guy and a huge font of knowledge and wisdom on many things local. And again, is also a contributor to the Local Search Ranking Factors Survey. Kind of behind the scenes, we've got myself. I'm Miles. I run Bright Local. We have a lot of our customers listening today, so thank you all for using Bright Local, but also for kind of getting involved in Inside Local and making it the great event it's becoming. We have Linda from the Local Search Forum. Again, hopefully no introduction needed for Linda. She's someone who gives so much to our industry and does ask for very little in return. There's a wonderful forum there. And we're also joined today by Colin Nielsen, who's the local SEO expert at Impresio Marketing. Because we've got so many people on the webinar today, we felt it was important to have another hand in the kind of text area. So it's great to have Colin with us. I've known Colin and Joy from Impresio for a long time. They're kind of customers of ours, and they run a great ship and a great business there, as well as being contributors and moderators of the Local Search Forum. So that's the team that you have today. Without further ado, I want to jump into the first section, and that is kind of looking at kind of historical and recent changes in the kind of Google's local results. It's just 5 slides just to kind of set the scene for the rest of the kind of Q&A. Some of the things that we'll go through may be quite obvious to more advanced users, but we also have a few newbies and some kind of local business owners who maybe haven't got the kind of expertise and the kind of depth of knowledge that others do. So they'll benefit from a kind of quick review of what these changes are, how they've impacted local rankings, and so when we come to do the Q&A, kind of everyone is up to speed and on the same page. So here's a quick timeline of kind of changes that have affected kind of Google's ranking. Some of these have affected kind of primarily organic, but also we've called out some of the kind of local changes. If we look at the bottom of the slide deck, kind of pre-October 2010, back in those days in 2009, life was a lot more simple for SEOs and SMBs. Google was just starting to wake up to the opportunity that local search offered, and so the local algorithm back then was a lot more basic and a lot more focused around kind of Google's own local product, which is called the Local Business Center back in those days, plus a few other kind of closely related signals. Then in 2010, Google started to get more serious about local, and it launched Google Places. And in the same year, it also made probably its first kind of significant algorithm update when it launched the Places search. And what that started to see was the blending of the local algorithm, so essentially the signals that determined how businesses ranked locally, which up to this date had been very much focused around kind of Google's own product and the verification, the optimization of that. And it started to blend it with its organic algorithm, and that's the algorithm that drove its main search results. So things such as how to get your website ranked, domain authority, links, content. All those things started to come together so that those organic factors started to have an impact on local. Many reasons why they did this, but it was really just Google getting more serious about local, getting more sophisticated in its understanding of localization, and wanted to make its local product that much better. So that was in around 2010. At the same time, it also started to alter the search results in the way it displayed those, and had what we call blended results, which are results that take information from both the local results, so the local product, which is Google Places, but also the website, and started to kind of draw those factors and that information together to get a more complete picture of a local business and to serve better results to searchers who had a local intent. The following year, so in 2012, then came a major update which was known as Venice. Venice was a real tipping point for local search. Google started to display, well, 2 real things why it was important. Firstly, Google started to display more local results back against more searches. So it started to understand that there was a greater kind of local intent behind many searches, and it also started to localize organic results. And this meant that localization and factors of localization started to influence not just the local results, but also the organic results. And so this is great for local businesses, because if they have a very strong locally and they had kind of good local content on their website and they're well optimized for local, they can start to rank not only within the kind of local results, but also start to challenge that higher authority sites in the organic listings as well. So the playing field was kind of leveled there. And then since then, we've had lots of product updates by Google, things such as kind of Google Plus Local launching, the dashboard for Google Places, and also looking at kind of improving the kind of underlying kind of data set which drives a lot of their local products to kind of improve consistency, reliability, sort of speed of update. So Google has massively invested in local and also become a lot more sophisticated with it. Then last month, pretty much, kind of 4 weeks ago to the day, we saw another change. And that's kind of was not why we wanted to run this webinar. We wanted to run this webinar anyway, but it gives, another point of kind of consideration for what we're going to discuss today. And what we've seen from that is almost a kind of reversal back to the original kind of pure algorithm and the pure sort of places search that we had before, away from the blended search. What we're seeing is basically a change in the kind of look and feel of results. And I've got a couple of slides that kind of point out the kind of key differences. So if we look at kind of pre-October, the kind of blended search results, how would you kind of typically identify these? Well, firstly, there were fewer pack type results in those days. Results were kind of blended and interspersed more amongst the kind of organic results. High-ranking local results would have to have a website link to it because website was a key factor, and organic ranking signals are a key factor in ranking for locally. So you'd have to have good domain authority for your website to rank locally. And then some of the content was pulled from the website rather than from your Google Plus Local page. And also businesses weren't able to rank in both organic and local results at the same time. They could either rank in one or the other. There was no real kind of duplication because there was one algorithm essentially driving both sets of results. Now what we're seeing is almost, like I said, a kind of rollback to kind of previous style sort of display that we had before. You pretty much always get a pack result now and none of the kind of blended results. It is possible for a business to rank high in the local results when it hasn't got a website link to it. If you think from an algorithm perspective, if Google is using the website to drive the local results, and if there isn't a website linked to a listing, then what's kind of Google done here? Is it just more than just a display change that they've got going on there? Have they actually either switched or reversed the kind of underlying algorithm? And then businesses can now actually kind of double rank on page one in both kind of organic and local. So are there two algorithms again driving the two different sets of results? So that's a kind of sort of potted history of what we've kind of seen, the kind of manifestation of these changes in the sort of search results. Now, if this is a shift back to a kind of pure algorithm, what does that mean? And also we're going to look at this in more detail, but what are the kind of likely winners and losers in terms of the sort of ranking signals? Well, it's the ones that are more geared around local, the ones that are probably going to gain in prominence. So things like citations, category selection, listing verification, reviews. Whereas it's the more traditional organic kind of ranking factors like links and site structure and domain authority that may have a lessening impact on ranking. And hopefully we can answer a few of these questions today, such as why has Google made this change? Is it a permanent change? Obviously, we'll never know that for sure, but what is the sort of consensus out there amongst SEOs and also amongst our panelists? And then is this purely a display change, or has Google really shifted the algorithm, and how does this change the influence of ranking factors? So we want to answer those questions today, plus a lot more detailed questions about ranking factors. Before we go on to the Q&A, we're going to run our set of polls. So what I'm going to do now is just come out of the slide deck there. Just go to our polls. We're going to run these 3 polls in quick succession, about kind of 30-40 seconds each. If as many people can answer as possible, that gives us the largest sample size, and that would be great. They're pretty quick and easy. They are literally just a kind of multiple choice selection. So hopefully everyone can see that on their screen. If everyone can start answering, that's great. Okay, we've got some answers coming through. We're up to 20% of attendees voted, 30%. 40% and climbing rapidly. We'd love to get up around 70-80%, so we've got a really good sort of sample size here. And by the way, we are going to show these results back at the end. We're going to put in some charts and display them back to everyone so everyone can see, which is great. Okay, 65%, up to 70%. We're going to shut this down in about 5-10 seconds to go on to the next poll. Let's make sure we get up to 70%. Okay, great. So we had 70% of people voted. Thank you, everyone, for doing that. I'm going to close that poll. And I'm going to go on to the next one. So the next one is, since these recent changes, have your clients gained or lost in rankings? And by the way, these are all anonymous, so we're not tying the answers back against anyone's name, or we won't be kind of calling you out and kind of publicizing that. It is all anonymous. So I'm going to launch the second poll now. Hopefully you can see that on your screen. Again, it's just multiple choice. If people can vote, that would be great. This is going to be, I think, going to be very interesting to see, how these changes are affecting lots of people out there. So we've got 50% of people voted, which is great. Let's get us up to 70% again. So if as many people could vote again, that would be fantastic. Up to 60%. 63. I'm going to shut down in 10 seconds. 65, 66. Come on, guys, we're nearly there. A few more votes, please. Get us up to 70%. Okay, so 67% looks like we've hit our peak there. 69%. Okay, we're going to close that poll and then go on to the third and final one, which is, have you changed your optimization tactics since these changes took place? So this is the third and final poll. Launching it now. Lots of votes coming in, up to 20%, 40%, 50%. This one's racing up nice and fast. Great. 65% already. The more people we vote, the better the sample size. The more kind of useful and kind of genuine set of results are that we get back. 69%. Come on, we need a couple more people to get to 70%. 70%. Okay, there we are. Okay, guys, I want to go into the Q&A, so I'm going to close that down. Thank you for everyone who voted. Like I said, we will be producing some charts and we'll display the results back to you very soon. Okay, so on to the second section of the webinar, which is the debate. This is where we're going to be spending most of our time, and also we're looking at kind of important ranking signals, looking at what kind of influence they have, then also looking at how the influence might have changed given the recent changes that we've got. For those of you who are kind of new to the industry, we have this thing called the Local Search Ranking Factors Survey. And within the survey, they look at, I think, over 80, 85 different individual factors and signals that influence kind of local ranking, and they kind of bracket those into kind of certain groups. So you've got things like kind of on-page signals to the website, link signals, citations, place page signals. So in our kind of discussion today, we're going to be kind of grouping or kind of focusing the discussions around the different groups of signals that we've got, and trying to kind of keep the questions kind of on tune and relevant to the section that we're talking about. So firstly, we have organic signals. So that's kind of that. I'm saying it's going to kind of encompass things like on-page link signals, the classic organic signals we've got. So panelists, if you could put your microphones back on, that would be great. I'm going to probably put the first question to Andrew Shotland. Andrew, the question for you is, are on-page signals weighted similarly for organic and local results, or do you see them being stronger for organic rankings versus local?
I kind of don't think of it that way. I think of it more like the difference. One of the big differences between local and organic is that the on-page signals they're kind of similar. There are definitely some unique things to local, but it's really the off-page signals in local are much, there's many more of them. And they come in all shapes and sizes. Whereas for organic, it's a pretty limited set of off-page things that you need to figure out. So are they weighted similarly? I don't know whether it's 50% on-page versus 50% off-page or anything like that. I just think that you need to do the right things on page. You need to do the right things off page. How's that for a very precise answer?
That's very good. That's very good. Any other panelists? Would you guys like to kind of pitch in on that one, or should we move on to another question?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in if I might. This is Phil. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Andrew that the weighting is similar for the on-page, off-page factors. From kind of between the pure local results and the organic or sort of localized organic results. I mean, I think sort of the on-page, off-page kind of classic SEO factors do matter a little bit less now, as opposed to a couple months ago. Only insofar as now Google, as you said, Miles, is showing more kind of pure local, Google Places, aka 7-pack results. And the organic factors do, of course, matter for those. But the thing is, they're going to matter a little less inherently for the kind of the pure, Google Places rankings as opposed to the organic ones. So I would say, in a nutshell, I would say that, insofar as there are more kind of pure local rankings showing up these days, I would say organic factors matter slightly less. But, as Andrew said, you still have to pay attention to them.
Okay, great. Got a question for Mike. Hopefully Mike can turn his microphone on.
It is on.
Great. Mike, with the recent changes, what's sort of evident to you? What experience have you seen with your clients, and kind of how they're faring after these changes?
That's a very interesting question. Overall, I don't think we saw very many negative changes, but interesting. Here's a couple of interesting things that I did see. We had a few clients that were in the top part of maps that were on outside of cities. They were just on the outskirts of the city boundary or just really far away from the city center. And when the changes took place, we saw those listings break away from their maps, so they no longer ranked in maps, but they ranked above the maps organically, and we actually saw traffic increases. And so I mean, it's very hard to tell, and I always really like people to try to not separate everything they're doing from map work to organic work, because quite frankly, you have to play together. And especially now, there's opportunities for ranking, potentially in both. But even if not, it's hard to say sometimes whether a map listing showing up maybe in the fourth space because there's 3 organic above it is better than having a 1 or 2 or 3 spot organic listing that has authorship tied to it. As far as click-through rates, there's been a few studies done either way, and I've seen some mixed results, but at the end of the day, there is definitely some ranking change. We saw both positive and negative fluctuation when it came to maps, but in some cases, having the algorithms revert back to more of a pure map result allowed for organic rankings to actually increase. And so just my take is do both. Be concerned about both, because local search is not just local map optimization, it's local search. Whether that's organic or map listings. So
yeah, I think that's a very fair comment, Mike. Very, very fair comment.
So, Mike, do you think that then is the fact that they're no longer appearing in the places results means that they're able to appear in the organic results? So also their organic listing was being held back by their maps listing.
I've seen that, and it's funny because the places that I've seen that has been where you might show up in a map, just a map listing, and you were third, but if it was released, it would be a little bit higher organically. Not every time, but yeah, that's been the case in some places. Now, yet again, one of the challenges is that's assuming that the maps are showing up below organic results in some cases. And I've seen that change even on the same search result to insert the map listings above organic, and then later, of course, it shows up under. Especially with the switch back to this pure, I've seen just a lot of mixed things taking place. And so, I'm not going to say which one is better or worse because it's going to be different in every situation. My recommendation is to optimize and think about both. And they're not very different. I mean, you're just adding on factors. Local is simply adding on factors to many organic things that we currently do. And if you look at it like that, then you always ensure that you take care of those organic matters as well. And regardless of if that really has a massive effect on map rankings, it will help overall across your entire local search marketing. And it'll be interesting to see how this, not necessarily reverting backwards in their algorithm, but as Google has more location-specific information about a business and they can rely on that more than potentially all the other organic points that they have, how this continues to push forward in map rankings, but also how that information could actually feed over into organic local search results eventually as well.
So I guess in sort of short then, if you've got a well-rounded sort of search strategy that covers off kind of bases both locally and organic, then that's always going to serve you kind of moving forward, whichever way Google turns.
Yes, yes, for sure. I think it's a much better strategy than only focusing on one or the other.
Sure.
Yeah,
Dev,
I'd like
Dev,
to, Miles, if I might, I just kind of like to piggyback for just a second off of what Mike said. I mean,
that sounds painful.
Yeah, yeah. Even if it's true that sort of the pure kind of classic local ranking factors like citations, categories, all the place page stuff. But even if we say for a minute that those factors are on the rise, I mean, it's still a fact that kind of a bad organic strategy can bring down the entire house. If you, for instance, if your site gets penalized because you built a bunch of crappy backlinks, then you're not going to rank in the organic results or in the maps results. So, a lot of people tend to forget that there's just so much overlap, as Mike said, between kind of the organic ranking factors and sort of what's commonly understood to be the local ranking factors. But as a result of that overlap, if you're not at the very least avoiding doing the wrong things on the organic side, you may not show up in maps at all.
Sure. Dev, just to bring you in here, are you seeing anything different in Canada? Are you seeing the same kind of changes there? And have you got any experiences that might be different to what the other guys have seen?
Yeah, the main differences that I'm seeing, we have clients in Canada and in the States as well, and what I've found is that it depends on the type of query, whether it's explicit or it's implicit. I've seen more of the pack basically superseding the organic search results on implicit queries. So for example, if you went into Google and typed in restaurants or just bakery, for example. And whereas previously an organic search ranking would trump the pack results, that organic search ranking has now dropped right below the pack usually. To compensate for that, what we've seen, a little bit of link building work with high authority, high page authority links pointed towards that organic ranking that's just sitting right below the maps can often coax it to go back up to the top, which is what we typically see, 3 or 4 organic results followed by your 7-pack. So it depends. I've seen that in implicit queries, map rankings typically will trump organic results, and on explicit queries where the location is actually being specified, typically organic will trump the local search results. But not a lot of difference in between Canada versus the States. They seem to follow very similar patterns.
Okay, great. In terms of the kind of localized content and kind of landing page strategies for local sites, do you see there being any change or any kind of lessening of focus on the kind of localized content on a site?
Yeah, so actually the biggest thing that I've seen is it's related to Venice, but almost a hypersensitivity on Google's part to delivering local content. We've had clients who basically had their home pages rank or maybe a sub-page related to a service rank organically before. But what we've noticed is that even without really doing any link building work, if you set up a sub-page for a particular service and the service area for that particular client, those pages have started ranking like a champ without doing much link building work. So as long as they're crawled and they're indexed and they're somewhat relatively sticky by use of internal linking from the site, those pages have started to pop up, especially for implicit queries where the actual location is not being specified in the search. And that's something that I've seen change probably over the last, I would say, 2 or 3 months, where these pages, if you just set up these service areas and you have, again, unique content on them, not just where you put in some content and you're changing the names of the locations, for example, essentially having roughly duplicate pages, those particular pages have been ranking quite well in organic search, but really no effect on local specifically for whether your landing page in your Google Places was directed towards a service-based or a sub-page rather than the home page.
Interesting. So you're seeing, like I said, almost a kind of acuteness in terms of Google's understanding of localization and kind of upweighting kind of local content, even if there aren't many links through to it.
Exactly, and I've seen that hypersensitivity go up in Canada. It was always fairly specific in the States, but in Canada I've seen that actually go up quite a bit, where if you start looking at a large sort of metropolitan city and you start looking at the suburbs that are within that city, Google's getting much, much better at being able to detect the right suburb and give you information that, or rather suggest locations or businesses that are closer to you than not. So it's something that we've noticed, and for in response to that, we're building out city-specific or location-specific landing pages that have unique editorial content on them, and noticing that even without any real link building work, they tend to rank, especially for implicit queries.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So sorry, yeah, is that Andrew?
Yeah, I just want to echo, I totally agree with Dev. I would say in terms of the time we're spending on different tasks, we're spending the most time on what he's talking about right now and seeing the most bang for the buck. Just doing decent updates of location pages seems to have a much bigger effect than almost anything else we're doing these days.
That's been the exact same for us as well, and back to how much time we're spending on different things. If you are not developing local content, and a local page strategy, and I'm not even saying just one page, but multiple pages, and even getting down into the neighborhood levels, then you're missing out on one of the quickest ways to just develop a lot more traffic. It is definitely a focus, and Google wants that localized content.
That's very interesting. So do you think then that links are becoming less important, specifically for kind of localized content? And would you recommend that you maybe don't focus so much on link building, but really focus more on content?
I would say, I'll hop in here. This is Mike.
Right.
I think that the reason that links, or basically external factors to these pages, don't matter as much right now is simply that there's not very many people that are taking advantage of it. So there's not a ton of localized content that's really useful. As this progresses and as more people get on board with that, external factors will begin to matter the same that they matter on many head terms and everything else. And you'll see the need to have more than just good internal linking structure to these pages taking place. They'll actually have to get more links. But for the time being, if you're the only guy, if you're the only kid on the block, you're the only kid on the block. So
it's a bit of first mover advantage there. And by the way, everyone, Mike joined us on a previous webinar where we talked about kind of content optimization and also optimization for kind of local businesses. There's a recording of that webinar available on Vimeo and on BrightLocal, and it was a great session. So Mike shared a lot of kind of great kind of landing page and kind of content structure tips there. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next section. We're looking at citations. I mean, this is also known as kind of external kind of local signals, but obviously most people kind of know it as this kind of citations, and kind of how that's how that kind of, I guess, citations. What's important with the citations in general, and has anything changed since obviously these kind of changes landed? So a question for let's bring Phil in at this point. Phil, in your opinion, if you look at some of the citations, if you look at the local ranking factors surveys, there's about 8 different mentions of citations amongst those kind of 80 factors. How important is kind of consistency and authority versus quantity of citations?
Well, I think equal only maybe by categories. I think probably the consistency of like your main basic citations. I mean, that's probably the one weapon I would ride into battle with if my goal was to rank in like the classic 7-pack. I mean, the 80-20 rule really applies here. I mean, there's really a point of diminishing return. After you are listed on, the YPs of the world, City Search, Angie's List, kind of those sites we all know about. The quantity of your citations really matters a lot less. I mean, the big if for most businesses is, can you nail those basic citations? Can you just, can you get rid of the duplicates? Can you get rid of any misinformation? Can you make sure that they're complete? And a lot of businesses don't do that. And, for them, more citations that are, kind of scattered all over the place really isn't going to help. And it's also worth noting that with citations, I mean, we sort of refer to them as just this giant, like, monolithic ranking factor. But really there are a lot of smaller ranking factors that go into them. Like, I mean, one area that gets overlooked all the time is like the categories you pick on the various listings. And people really neglect those, and especially now that Google has done away with the custom categories in Google Places. If you just go to any Google Places listing and click on the Edit Details button, you'll see the mapmaker record for that business, and you'll see all kinds of stuff that maybe you didn't, all kinds of categories that maybe you didn't specify in your Google Places listing, but that Google pulls from all over the place. So, and I've seen Google pull categories from like keyword fields, where you go to you list your business on a site and it says, hey, what keywords do you want to specify? Google looks at that stuff. So really all of kind of the little all the little stuff on each of your citations also matters quite a bit. The categories, all the additional information you're allowed to add to those. It's definitely worth taking the time to do those right. But in terms of quantity, I would say really just pick your battles. Don't go for 200 citations if you haven't nailed the 20 to 40 most important ones.
And once you've nailed those 40 kind of most important ones, and you kind of clean them up, what's your approach to a kind of longer term citation strategy, particularly if you're in a competitive industry or in a competitive area?
Yeah, really.
If everyone sorts out those top 40, what's next?
Yeah, really. There's several schools of thought. I mean, my preference is to then start kind of focusing on reviews, because then you're actually in a position where you can focus more on reviews. I mean, and I don't mean focus on reviews to the exclusion of like any kind of on-page, kind of building out localized content like these guys explained a few minutes ago. And keep working on citations on the back burner. But I would at that point, once you have those say 40 basic citations pretty much down cold, and I would shift emphasis to reviews, because it takes so long to kind of build up a corpus of reviews, not only on Google Plus, but on all the other sites that matter. And it's really a long-term commitment, and the best time to start it was yesterday.
Yeah, it does take a long time. A couple of other questions. I'm just going to grab a question that's come out of the kind of Q&A. We always get a lot of questions about Yext. Obviously, they only kind of work in the US right now, so if any of our Canadian or UK listeners, apologies, this may not be kind of relevant to you. Any of the panelists, have you guys used Yext? Have you had any experience of the results you get from Yext? And how, what's your recommendation on that as an option for cleaning up citations among the big sites?
So I could probably speak to that. Full disclosure, I do consulting for Yext. So
Is that? Sorry, guys, just everyone knows this is Andrew.
Yeah. So I'm probably a little biased, but here's kind of what I've seen with Yext. So Yext is great if you need to quickly clean up citations across some of the top sites. They don't cover every site, but they have a really good network of the top US sites. So for companies that are changing their data a lot, like they're changing their hours, they're having promotions or whatever, they want to update their profiles, it's a pretty neat solution. The thing I can tell you, I don't think it's proprietary, I hope it's not, is across the listings I've seen, and I haven't done an exhaustive study, but across the listings I've seen, is when you beef up your profile pages, meaning don't just add your name, address, and phone number, meaning like photos, videos, descriptions, all sorts of stuff. It actually improves the organic rankings of those profile pages. So it's not just helping you with your citations to your site, it's actually helping those pages that the sites they're already on. And the businesses that I've used it with have seen a pretty decent lift in leads coming off of those IYP sites. So there's a whole bunch of other reasons why you might be interested in using the service, but that to me seems like one of the better ones.
And I'll add to this, full disclosure, I don't work with Yext. I think looking at Yext, it is a great solution. People should not look at Yext as an SEO solution for fixing Google Places. They need to look at Yext as a great way to get information spread across the entire ecosystem, and having, you know, information that is correct and, like Andrew said, fully filled out with special features, because that's what you're getting from it. You know, Yext doesn't have a guarantee that you're getting Google Plus's or Google Plus local rankings, you know, and they don't have a relationship with Google yet. And so I think that's the important way to look at it. And so I think people ask the wrong question about Yext. You know, well, does it work? Yeah, it works. It does exactly what it says it'll do. It's just that I think they're looking at it saying, will this count as citations for ranking, when they need to look at it as, will I get traffic from these directories? Will these enhanced profiles help me on these specific directories to bring in traffic? And do I recover the amount of money that I'm investing in Yext from these directories? And if the answer is yes, I think it's a great option.
So, yeah, that's a pretty good point. This is Deb, by the way. And one thing I'd add about Yext is that it's not a substitute to cleaning up citation data. If your ecosystem is messy in terms of your NAP data, Yext will not necessarily help you. So specifically, you know, take the example of if a business is acquiring another business, or if you've merged, for example, if you don't have the historical record of the NAP data of old or historical legacy data that exists in the ecosystem, Yext won't fix that for you. But for what it advertises itself as, it does pretty well.
Okay, great. Let's go to send a link, by the way, in the chat box, which is a link to kind of expert citation survey. SEO is what you might find useful if you haven't seen that. So I'm just going to put it in the chat box. Let's look at. I've got a question for Andrew again, actually. As you mentioned,
Hey, Miles, you're
Miles.
coming in very poorly right now.
Choppy.
You turned into a robot. You sound like a droid.
I wish I could be a robot. Get a lot more done. Is that any better?
Yeah, Miles, it still kind of sounds like you're in a helicopter.
Okay.
Why don't you pop your question in the chat?
Let's try myself. Is that any better?
No.
No.
Very strange. Okay. So this is always off. Let me just going to unplug, see if that does anything.
It's kind of like a webinar by Pink Floyd.
Okay, I'm back. Is that any better?
Yeah,
that's better.
Yeah, it's better. Apologies for that. God, I've lost my thread now. Yeah, a question for Andrew. That's right. Structured versus unstructured citations. Obviously, structured being where you've got a clear name, address, phone number on a citation listing, versus unstructured that might be less kind of clearly marked up, maybe a kind of reference on a blog or reference on another kind of content site for your business. What's your view on structured versus unstructured? And as an example, if you have a citation on an unstructured citation on a site that's got really high authority, is that more powerful than a structured citation on a site that has lower authority?
Got it. So let me first start out by I do think like having a clean set, a clean NAP across citations is a good thing to have, and certainly having a messed up NAP can screw you up. That said, I think the concept of citations is probably one of the most overhyped schemes or strategies for local SEO. It's important, but I think it's like taken on an importance in the media, I guess, or in webinars, than more than I think it warrants. Structured versus unstructured, it's good to have a mix. Is it better to have like a mention of your business name and a keyword on the New York Times without a link? I don't know. In my experience, doing in competitive niches or niches, as they might say in Canada, the way to go, when you do structured or unstructured, and I think it's a good idea to do both, it's going to help you if you weren't doing anything before, meaning it's going to move you from not ranking for anything to ranking number 50 or 40. So you get on the map, but you're nowhere near really ranking, at least in my experience. So it's a good thing to do. It's good to have like videos on YouTube that have your location in them, or photos on Flickr that are geotagged with location keywords and things like that. It's not bad. To me, it's kind of a foundational thing and not a move the needle thing. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it is. Has anyone else, any of the panelists got a kind of view on that?
I think this is Deb, by the way, I think you need to cover off all your structured citation opportunities because not only if you sort of look at correlation versus causation, there's a bigger chance or a higher chance that structured citations will also have things such as semantic markup data, whether it's schema or HCARD, for example, to send search engines the right type of signals that, this is actually an address, this is a street name, for example, and that's a city. In addition to them typically having better overall off-page signals as well. So, better distribution of link juice, better page authority, better domain authority. So, like Andrew's talking about, I think it's foundational for basically acquiring every single structured citation you can, and then working in unstructured citations in a manner that is as editorially kosher with Google as possible, rather than just sticking in a phone number or an address every off-page opportunity that one gets. It will help over time if you start making those citations a bit stickier. So remember that citations that have links that point back to the organic site or to a subpage of the organic site that may have localized content on it do pass page authority. So building links to citations that pass or increase in page authority will pass link juice to that particular page on the client site. So over time, that effect compounds.
Wonderful. That is a very detailed answer. Thank you.
I would like to, is it okay, Miles, if I add on to this? This is Mike.
Yeah, sure, Mike, go for it.
So I think that we are talking about citations overall just wrong. And the reason I say that is it's the same way as links, right? People say get links because they help you rank in Google. And I think that the conversation has changed and is starting to change a lot more, where people are saying, well, get good links because they drive traffic to your website from relevant sources, and yeah, sure, that helps you in Google, but don't have that be your #1 priority for your link building. And I think that we're behind the boat when it comes to citations on that. And the fact that even we're calling them citations kind of shows that. We're saying, well, how many citations do you have? Is this helping you rank in Google+? When it's like, hey, if you treat these local listings well, and if you fill them out fully, and if you try to get them to perform well on the actual directory that they're in, then you know what? I've seen people get business off of those. I've seen people call, especially from a site like Yelp, depending on the vertical, or in the legal space, other lawyer-specific sites. And so we need to look at it and do it for that purpose. And then say, hey, you know what? If I'm building citations for the sake of ranking in Google and nobody's ever going to look at this, I'm pretty sure that Google's not going to count that over time as they continue to progress and they understand the authority of websites and traffic on websites, etc. Like, those things just won't matter. So build a local listing, have your name, address, and phone number in places where you want people to see your name, address, and phone number and call you from that location. If a YouTube video is getting a crap ton of visitors to it, put your name, address, phone number there so people know your name, they know where you're located, and they'll call you. And if that helps, great. But we need to look at that differently. And I think once we do, we'll start having the correct uses of name, address, phone number, and having better directories for the sake of getting a call, which is the whole point anyways.
So you think, obviously there's a ton of different directories out there, general, national, niche, local. A lot of them have got barely any traffic or nothing that's, kind of would stack up to, any kind of sort of significant kind of lead generation opportunity. Are you saying that by kind of, would you have more of a kind of broad approach then in trying to get your listings into as many as possible so that you can try and grab as much of that potential traffic that's out there and then enrich that information?
I would actually say I would say less. I would do less and do it better. Instead, like Andrew said, don't just put your name, address, phone number on the listing. Fill out the full description, add full pictures, because we can say all day long that these directories don't get any traffic, but that's just not true. Directories still do get traffic. Yeah, are their days numbered and where they get traffic? Well, it depends. It depends on how they reinvent themselves. But I think Yelp's a great example. There's businesses that strictly survive off of traffic from Yelp. There's businesses that strictly survive off of traffic from niche directories, and I think that still has some credence to it, and we need to look a little bigger. And then the ones that don't, if it doesn't matter for your business, then why are you doing it? Spend your time developing content and doing something else other than building a directory that nobody's ever going to see. And so that's my point would be, find the directories that are getting traffic that do matter to you and make those awesome. Try to work on your rankings in those directories, and even pay for a featured directory if the cost makes sense, so that you can get whatever available traffic's there. But I mean, directories still rank in local on local results. And after Hummingbird, for some reason, or at least on a lot of the things I've been watching, I've still seen a lot of directories ranking, and sometimes more so than before, and I find that kind of interesting.
I'd like to just right on what Mike just said. There's I think earlier this year I did a webinar with YellowPages.com where they explained how their internal algorithm works, and so a lot of what Mike was saying about how do you update your profile really could be a factor in how you rank when someone searches on YellowPages.com for your business category. And what the guy who was the head of product said to me was that, I can't remember the exact number, but a relatively small percentage of businesses had actually filled out their profile on YellowPages.com, which means that there's a huge opportunity just going to YellowPages.com and beefing up your profile.
And
this is Phil, by the way. Is it okay if I chime in for a second?
Yeah, sure. Then we'll move on after that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what all these guys have said, but I would also add that what people forget about citations, even though I kind of don't like to use the word in this context, is that they are really important for branded search. In other words, what happens when somebody sees your business in the Google plus local results, or even in the organic results, and then searches for it by name. I mean, it's true that basically nobody starts their kind of local searches on yellowpages.com or Insider Pages or City Search or what have you. But those sites tend to rank pretty well in Google for brand name searches. So if I type in ABC Plumbing Co. Indianapolis into Google, I will see the directories where ABC Plumbing Co. is not only listed but has reviews. So it's really worth cultivating basically the image that people get when they're searching for you by name. They already kind of performed a broad search for plumbers, for instance, and they've narrowed it down to a few options, and they're just trying to figure out who to call first. And then it comes down to okay, when they search for you by name, do you have reviews on those sites that show up in Google's results? When people click through to those sites, is there more information about your business, or do they just see like a bald listing that hasn't been filled out? So I think for that reason alone, it's really worth kind of worrying about all of those listings that don't get quite as much attention as Google does.
Great. One quick question that's come through from Derek on Q&A, which is something that we get asked a lot. I'm going to put this question to Dev, actually. Derek's question is, I'm curious about NAP. How sensitive is Google to subtle differences in NAP, like street versus ST, road versus RD? how much should we spend, how much time should we spend agonizing over things like that, or is kind of getting the kind of core information right enough for Google?
I'm a pretty particular type of local SEO, so I like making sure that it's all aligned and it's saying the same thing. So RD instead of road. Essentially, the way I look at it is your Google Places listing and your citation should be a one-to-one map of each other, basically. If they're not, it's worth correcting on a sliding scale. The more competitive your vertical is, the deeper the amount of time, or the more the amount of time I would spend on fixing those types of issues. If you have you're matching on road names, suite numbers, for example, zip codes or postal codes, and you seem to be ranking pretty well and your competitors are really not posing a problem in terms of ranking, then I wouldn't bother too much with it. But where possible, you can't really have a citation cleanup exercise, or even when you're building new citations, consistency is a very big deal. So making sure that they all say the same thing in road or ST versus street, for example, is something that we, at least internally with our team, make sure that they do. Otherwise, it's not really a 100% complete cleanup job.
Okay, that's great. We're just going to move on to the next section now. I've got an awful feeling that my screen is stuck, so I'm just going to come out of it. Is anyone seeing my screen change? I'm clicking between slides. No? No? Okay, I'm going to try and do a quick bit of fixing. I'm just going to stop.
Hello?
Miles?
Is anybody out there?
Looks like the panelists are still here.
Is Miles back?
Yeah, I'm hearing everybody but Miles.
Okay, I'm seeing a note. It says he's temporarily out. Talk about place page factors. So let's go ahead. I don't know. Who do you think was up? Phil? Do you want to talk about, let's talk about the places page itself. And
oh boy.
So my guess is categories, etc. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to totally kind of ad-lib this because I have no idea where Miles was going next. But, I mean, I had a couple things
I got some questions. Here, I'll ask you. How is the makeup of place page signals changing, and which are gaining influence?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had custom categories. Well, actually, until a few months ago, we had custom categories, and we didn't have custom URLs for Google Plus pages. Now it's the other way around. Now we have things like, some businesses have custom URLs, and nobody has custom categories anymore. But aside from that, I mean, there are not really a lot of moving parts on the places page. Essentially you have two jobs, which is one, don't get penalized. Two, pick out the right categories. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add onto that, but like there's actually, I mean, the places pages themselves are actually kind of lean. I mean, there's not actually that much to optimize on them.
I have something to mention about categories. Back when we only had the 5 places categories in the old Dash, if somebody wanted to rank for something custom like laser dentistry, they wouldn't if it wasn't in their custom categories. Now it seems like, since the whole category has changed, Google is doing a better job of finding out those custom categories from your site and third-party data, so you can rank for laser dentistry even though it's not a default cat in your Dash. Is
Yeah.
anybody seeing that open up a little bit more?
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is basically the same as yours, that now categories have become sort of a mushy pursuit. You know, you have to pay attention to, you know, your categories on, you know, the Yelps of the world, you know, the Yelp pages, all the other sites, and kind of have them get fed into Google indirectly, because, you know, Google looks at those sites. So yeah, categories has become actually kind of complicated on one level, but, you know, on another level simpler. I mean, you just have to make sure, you know, every site you're listed on, you have picked out as many relevant categories as possible.
I would spend, this is Mike, by the way, I would spend some time looking at David Mim's local search ecosystem and looking at relationships to Google and those that are active compared to like the passive relationships. Because if I were Google, I would be taking the category choices from those active partners and trusting those category options. And most of those places do have a better, you know, category system. They might have 8,000 categories where, you know, Google only has a few thousand. So that there's those options. And I would also add to it that if you're dealing with bulk managed listings, you still can actually have custom categories because you're uploading your own categories into the list and not choosing on a bulk sheet.
I was not aware of that. That's
Dun,
pretty
dun,
cool.
dun. So if you're really, you know, hurt on not having those custom categories, that's a great way to do that.
And of course, it's worth taking advantage of that. You know, while you still can, because Google's probably going to sunset that any day now. I mean,
well, you know, at the same point, they don't really need to, though, because you can still get category choices from everywhere else. You know,
That's true.
They may discount the factor of like including it in a bulk sheet, but we still include it in bulk sheets all the time, and it seems to help.
Oh, cool.
Guys, it's Miles here. I'm back. I've managed to get myself back into the webinar, which is great. So thank you very much for kind of carrying on there. Another question, and apologies if I missed this kind of being addressed, is around verification. Because there's almost kind of varying sort of levels and stages of verification and merging that you can have on kind of places listing these days. You know, you obviously got, you know, non-verified, verified, you know, kind of merged. Is there any kind of distinction in terms of ability to rank if you haven't merged your profile yet, or if you've just got a plain verified profile?
By merge, Miles, by the way, this is Phil. By merged, are you referring to kind of upgrading the listing from sort of the basic, you know, Google Places to, you know, sort of the social Google Plus type of page? I mean, is that what you mean by merge?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I mean, just my 2 cents on that is, and I think we covered this on the very first webinar we did. There's no inherent benefit in having kind of the upgraded, you know, AKA social, AKA Google Plus page. I mean, there may be an indirect ranking benefit if you know, really go to town with all the social features, and, you know, you're adding your customers to circles. You know, you do posts on your page. You know, there's some interaction on your posts. You know, customers and other people are, you know, plus running them, you know, talking about them. You know, you can review other businesses as a business yourself. So, and, you know, vice versa. So there's another kind of way to sort of use the social bells and whistles. But, you know, even then, you know, the ranking benefits would be, you know, would mostly apply to like personalization. You know, also known as, you know, the results that people see when they're signed into Google that are, you know, specific to them. But yeah, I mean, it's too early to say whether there are any kind of direct ranking benefits to having that sort of upgraded page. But at the moment, I'm not seeing that.
And really, this is Mike. They're telling people not to necessarily upgrade your listing because they're going to roll that upgrade to everybody. And I would find it quite interesting if they told you, well, it wouldn't be the first time they've told you not to do something and then have that work for rankings. But you know, I wouldn't go out and upgrade to social for the sake of rankings currently.
Yeah, and this is Andrew. I can tell you from personal painful experience over the last couple of months, when they automatically upgrade you, they may screw you for a month or two while they're updating. So don't be surprised if your listing goes pending or your rankings go crazy in a negative way. And when you call Google Plus Local Support, they said, "Oh, we're upgrading you. Check back in 2 weeks."
Yeah, this is Dev. I can second that. And you face other things like your reviews. Half of your reviews basically disappearing, but they do come back, thankfully. But yes, you might be sort of out of pocket for 2 or 3 weeks at least.
Yeah, so prepare your clients ahead of time. You don't want to tell them what's happening.
Isn't
great.
their current advice, Mike, again, that they do not want you to upgrade because they are going to merge them all themselves or upgrade them all? And if you have already upgraded yourself, it might create duplicates.
That's what they're saying. I mean, I haven't tried, basically upgrading a page manually since since Google started telling people not to do so. I mean, so on one level, I'm not sure what happens, but yeah, that's currently the sort of the official word.
I can speak to that a little bit. We think there will likely being the keyword, a way to merge if somebody's already created a Google Plus page, but Google really doesn't want you to do the manual upgrade or the manual merge where you create a separate Google Plus page and verify it. Now, if you do have the new dashboard, they just told me in our last Google Hangout that it's safe to use the Google Plus widget to upgrade and merge that way. But if you have the old dashboard, don't create a Google Plus page. Just wait for the auto upgrade.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda. Just going to grab a couple of questions that have come in to the kind of chat module. Well, someone's saying they've got a client's got kind of 8 locations in and around kind of one city. Each has its own kind of Google Plus page. Should they be looking to kind of interlink those Google Plus pages in any way, or to kind of group? There's an option to kind of group them under kind of control under sort of one manager's page, for example, or should they just leave them as separate, distinct Google Plus pages? And that question, by the way, came from. Who did that come through from? It came from Ernest. So I'm not sure if there's any more kind of background to that, but I guess it's looking for how can they maybe improve ranking by combining pages, or make it easier to manage by linking those pages together.
From
Phil?
Phil.
Yeah, I'm not 100% clear on the question in that I'm not sure what you mean by linking the pages together. I mean, now obviously Google has made it so that Plus pages pass page rank, and so you can kind of link them to each other, and that may or may not move the needle. But beyond that, I'm not sure what is meant by linking them together. I mean, is it the same Google accounts?
How about in terms of the sort of social side of it, in terms of linking it to a kind of a Google Plus sort of social profile? Is it a one-to-one relationship you can have with that, or can you have a one-to-many?
I mean, I'm still not 100% clear on the question, because again, you can also, by linking, you can also have when you fill out your Google Plus page, there's the section at the bottom that says, links and, contributor to, and so, maybe you can link your pages that way. On any given Google Plus page, you have a link to, your 7 other pages. But again, I'm just still not. I'm sure it's just me, but I'm not getting the question.
Actually, he's followed up to say just add a link section. So I think that actually does address it in terms of the kind of linking.
Yeah, there's no harm. Probably not.
There's no harm in
either, but
Do you see the Google Plus pages? You see them passing link value. Is that only within? They can pass link value off to other domains outside of Google, or just within the kind of Google Plus local network or infrastructure?
Good question. I mean, I'm not sure. What I say is a little bit kind of secondhand information. I mean, I know that now a Google Plus page is actually a page. It is a crawl. It shows up in Google's index, and if you search for, say, if you type my name into Google, Philip Rozek, you will probably find my Google Plus page, right there in the SERPs. So, in that sense, they pass link value, but I haven't done any link building, to a Google Plus page. So I can't really say, there's only so much I can say about that. I simply know that will pass. Right?
So this is Dev, and we've done some testing around that, and what we found is that, well, this is probably common knowledge by now, but Google Plus is the fastest way of getting any new page indexed, essentially. And I encourage you guys to go look at your own Google Webmaster Tools. If you're under the links to your site section, you may actually notice that Google.com will pop up as being one of the top referrers for links, basically. And all of those are Google Plus URLs. So just like Phil's talking about, they're real pages. They get indexed. We've run some tests around, basically gobbledygook type pages that don't make a lot of sense, just to see whether getting Google Plus to link to those particular pages makes a difference. And a fresh page, aging that for about 90 days to see whether it gathers any page authority at all. The results have been inconclusive, but being able to get those particular links from Google Plus, they do show up in Google Webmaster Tools, which means that if anything, there's nothing wrong with that linking behavior actually happening.
Yeah, this is Andrew. So 2 data points. You might want to check out Eric Enga's. I think he published a study he did a week or 2 ago on the effect of Google Plus rankings, and just like Dev said, it was inconclusive. But I tend to focus less on can I get a link from a Google Plus page than can I get a Google Plus page to rank. And a really totally benign but easy example is if you go to Google right now and type SEO job board, you'll see this Google Plus community I just set up on a whim now ranks in the top 3 results for SEO job board, which isn't the most competitive search, but it's not competitive. And it does so, I think, because there's a lot of internal linking in Google Plus that's pushing it up, and I'm not getting it personalized. So I think you should start to think about Google Plus as, is there a way I can leverage Google Plus to get the Google Plus pages ranked versus, oh, how am I going to get this other site ranked?
Okay, guys, that's great. I'm just going to jump on to the next section, which is kind of looking at kind of location and distance and how important that is right now and how that's been affected by any of the sort of recent changes. So maybe a question for Andrew as he was last on there. Obviously, kind of distance from centroid was a key factor. I had a lot of discussion about it probably going back, kind of 18 months to 2 years. How are you seeing the importance of, well, I guess the role of the centroid is one part, and also distance from the centroid as a factor in a business's ability to rank?
Well, it totally depends on the location of the user. Is kind of what I'm seeing. So particularly like with mobile, right? So your centroid is almost meaningless when you're doing a mobile search. It's really proximity to the mobile device that I'm seeing sort of trump centroid. And also with this thing that Dev was discussing earlier about beefing up your location pages, I'm seeing that kind of trump centroid stuff all the time, particularly with service businesses that have no location in the cities they're servicing. So sure, get your company located as close to the centroid of a city as you can, if you can. But I don't think I would stress too hard about it.
So a lot of questions that will go through people's minds are, I've got a client who's on the outskirts of the suburbs of a big city. They obviously want to start ranking for some terms to cover as much of that, large urban kind of catchment area as possible, but physically they're located kind of on the outside. What would your, maybe this is a question for Mike, what would your advice for them to be as a strategy where they're physically disadvantaged by being on the outside, on the outskirts of the city? How would you go about kind of tackling that if that was your client and you wanted to try and get them, customers from a bigger catchment area as possible?
I would build out pages for each one of the small communities around that city and for the main city itself. And I would look at it and say, okay, well, we might not be able to get map rankings in every one of these places, but we can shoot for as high as organic rankings as we possibly can, like localized organic rankings. That's one way. Now, if it's totally determining on how risky or how much money you're wanting to spend, I think that there's definitely ways out there to set up offices that range in risk level in markets that you want to be in, and And Google's guideline on it is that, if you say that a business is there, then you need to have somebody there from 9 to 5 or whatever hours you put. If you put from 9 to 1, then you need somebody to presently be there for that time. And so if it means that much to you that it's worth the cost of that, then open an office in one of these places. It could even be just, small. It doesn't have to be anything great, but you can do that. Now, if you want to be risky, then you could go a virtual office route and not have anybody there and hope that the listing lasts. But you just need to know what Google is expecting of you and determine whether you personally are willing to follow that or not. But the key is, if you want to rank in any market, you have to have content around that market. You've got to have something representing that market.
Okay, that's an excellent answer. Thank you very much, Mike. Dev, I'm going to bring you in on another question. So obviously with different types of businesses, they have different kind of catchment areas. So as an example, customers will travel further to see a specialist doctor or lawyer than they say will to go to a kind of local cafe. So does the type of business you are impact on the area which you can rank in? If you took a cafe versus a dentist in the same city, do you think Google would look at their industry and determine, based on that, how widely they should be able to rank?
I think that's a very interesting question, and we haven't run any real tests on it. Empirically, it makes sense that if you happen to be a type of business where you have a larger overall surface area, that you'd be able to see sort of more widespread listings. Now, I see widespread listings in two different instances on Google. One of them is when there's just too few actual businesses. So if you take, for example, not a major metropolitan area, you're taking suburbs or more rural areas, for example, and if there is, basically not enough real businesses to populate the 7-pack, then the map markers seem to be fairly spread out at that point in time. I couldn't say conclusively whether, if you happen to be a business that had a much larger service area, or where your customers might travel an hour, for example, let's say you're a microbrewery or something like that, and there's really no other game in town that does the same thing that you do, whether or not Google looks at specific verticals and allows a greater overall sort of catchment area.
I'd like to, great. Yeah, Miles, I'd like to add on to what Dev said, which I absolutely agree with. I mean, the huge factor is really, what is the search term? How many local, what is the density of local competitors for a given search term? I mean, just to take a sort of, just to take an example, I mean, if I run a dentist, a dental clinic 10 miles outside of Dallas, and I want to rank in, the 7-pack results, let's say, for the term, Dallas dentists, it's probably not going to happen, because Google can just pick so many more closer, presumably more relevant dental offices that are closer to the middle of town. But if, on the other hand, one of my services as a dentist is endodontics. I perform root canals for people. There are far fewer dentists who do that. So, if somebody types in Dallas endodontics or Dallas endodontist or something like that, there's actually a good chance that I'll rank for that, because again, Google has to go has to look at a wider swath of geography to be able to even find endodontists. So really, as the level of competition for a given search term goes up, sort of the geography that you can get visible in goes down.
Okay, well, that's great. We're running a little behind time, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump on to the next section, which is looking at reviews. We're going to ask a couple of questions to this, and then we'll wrap up this section and move on to the next section. So how do you see, and let's put this question to kind of Andrew, how do you see the future, I guess, of kind of review signals? And do you think that reviews are ever going to gain more in prominence, or do you think the ease of which reviews can be spammed might be something that holds them back as a kind of pure high quality ranking signal?
So I'm seeing reviews be pretty potent, and it's hard to say whether they're potent because they're reviews or they're potent because they're just more content. And I'm seeing it being potent on review sites, as well as putting it on your own pages. In fact, one of the tactics that we've been using really well is when we're beefing up these location pages, is we're beefing them up with customer reviews. And I believe, Mike, you might remember this more than I do. I believe Joel Headley of Google even inferred that they're going to be increasing the usage of what I think they call quality reviews lately, meaning they're looking for like good reviews or something like that. That's going to sort of power the rankings. I think he said that at a local U thing a while ago.
There's a well, look at how they sort reviews now. They sort reviews by top reviewers, by people in your circles, similar people to you. And I think they look at a lot of semantics around those things. But I mean, reviews definitely will continue to gain importance, and who they come from will continue to matter more and more, especially as profiles become unified across all Google's products. So that's definitely going to be the case for the next few years.
And when you say who, do you mean the actual individual rather than, say, a third-party site like Citations that might have a review?
No, I mean individuals on like Google, specifically Google reviews. And as Google gets their own review database, I look at them relying on other databases of reviews much less for any type of significance.
Yeah, I think, also, the thing is, Google has been
Google introduced what's called the City Experts program, which is basically its answer to Yelp's Elite Squad. Now, personally, I don't think it's going to last or really ever take off, but Google's pushing reviews very hard, and as Mike said, they really are. Google, it does care about who writes the reviews. I mean, to qualify for this City Experts program, I think you have to, write 50 reviews and then basically write 5 Google reviews a month, in perpetuity, as long as you want to be called a city expert. So Google is trying to get people involved, and in the same way that Yelpers are like hardcore about their reviews and are very prolific. And Google is pushing the same thing very hard.
Okay, looking at the second point on the slide, you've got kind of review quantity, diversity, and velocity. And then you actually get further down, a kind of reviewer authority. What do you think are the really kind of standout points about reviews? Is it getting quantity? Is it getting high star rating? Is it getting kind of a frequent number of reviews each month? If you were crafting, I guess, an ideal review kind of optimization or kind of a kind of review building plan, what would be the key 3 things you'd have on it? I don't mind who answers that. Mike, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, I would say that for me the important thing is the consistency aspect, because if you blast too much at once, then sometimes those will get filtered. So constant reviews monthly that do have higher star ratings and come from established accounts. That's what you're looking for. And I think if you do those things, your reviews will last through all filters and will, constantly be on the listing and over time help with rankings.
Great. Yeah, Phil, you talked about... Sorry, Andrew, yeah.
I just want to jump in. So I agree with Mike. The only thing I'll say is from I don't think reviewer authority is really there yet for Google. And just because I see how much spam reviews get, really do well. So I think in the long run you need to have it, but right now I'm not seeing like a huge practical benefit from only getting authority reviews.
Yeah, this is Devin, and Andrew, I'd have to agree with you. From a fundamental standpoint, I think from review quantity, get 5 reviews at least, because that gets you your golden stars in Google and you get to stand out a little bit. And beyond that, velocity being the most important thing. Don't, like Mike said, don't basically have them all come in at the same time. Have them distributed in different places and coming in a slow but very steady pace.
Just to go back on and talking a little on authority of those reviews, Google already has top reviewers. It's funny, we did a study of them. A majority of them are Google employees. But anyhow, you can sort reviews by top reviewers already, and you can do that on Maps, and you can do that within Plus. And I think very soon we're going to see that same ability leak its way into just normal search results or into carousel results. And so when that does, then that authority is already established there. And I'm not saying like your authorship authority. I'm talking just more about being a trusted reviewer, somebody who's been invited to be a top reviewer already. And as that program continues to build and get more people in there, you know, if people do choose to sort their reviews by top reviewers, you know, if you don't have a review from a top reviewer, you won't even be on the list.
Okay, that's great. We're nearly kind of out of time, so I'm just going to kind of jump on through I'm probably going to skip out the next section. If you weren't able to get your questions answered, by the way, Linda has set up a page on the local search forum. Please do post your questions there. Linda's also going to download the kind of Q&A from after this. But if you want to post your question there, Linda will send that link round in the chat. Then we can always kind of follow up and answer your questions kind of after the webinar. So apologies if we haven't managed to answer your question. I hope we've answered a lot and given lots of excellent advice and tips here today. I've certainly kind of learned a lot. I'm just going to skip out the next section just due to kind of time restrictions. I want to jump to this bit, which is, you know, looking ahead, 2014. You know, what do you guys, I mean, ask each in turn, kind of think are the big predictions for where you know, kind of local is going to move, not just around ranking factors, but if you were to kind of hang your hat on a kind of strategy for next year, what would it be? And I've got an excellent slide with 4 floating heads around a really kind of gothic crystal ball, just to kind of see what you guys think. So let's start from right to left. Mike, what would be your kind of predictions and where you're going to sort of put your emphasis next year?
Mine would be on 2 places, and that is content strategy, localized content strategy, and on reviews. I think that those are 2 big areas we'll see a lot of advancements in regards to rankings and acquisition of customers.
Great answer. Andrew?
Boy, I hate to be boring, but kind of echoing what Mike's saying. The one difference, I think, or I don't know if difference, but an additional thing we're really looking at hard is putting tools in the hands of clients to basically get them to easily add content to their websites without needing to have a content writer, without needing to do anything that they don't want to do. And I think that's the way to make it scalable.
And on that, what's an example of the kind of tool you're using? Is it WordPress? Is it kind of giving them a simple CMS, or have you got any other?
No. So right now we're testing a mobile application where, for example, let's say a plumber can go out in the field and do a job, and then let's say it's in Pleasanton where I live, and they can at the end of the job basically get a review and also do a status update. So I fixed the water heater in Pleasanton today at this address, and that data will immediately get updated to their location page. And we found that's working pretty amazingly well.
Instant. And are you kind of also publishing that onto sort of Twitter and Facebook and other areas at the same time, or is it just content for the site?
Just content for the site.
Okay, interesting. Great, Andrew. Thank you. Dev.
I think our biggest focus is on content strategy and
Hello, Dev.
specifically
Lost you
looking
there.
at. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. You said content strategy and then something else which we lost. So can you just roll back to content?
Sure. So content strategy, but with a specific focus on content having semantic markup where possible. So essentially looking at things like getting reviews or testimonials, for example, in response to Hummingbird on service pages, building out FAQs related to the service that a client provides in that area, as well as getting testimonials from clients or customers that they've serviced within that area as well, to really kind of drive home that it's a very local specific page. And then beyond that, looking at trying to create signals that are offsite, whether that's check-ins, for example, or whether that's on Google Plus or on Foursquare or on Facebook, for example. But like Andrew's talking about, the minute a particular review is being generated, just being able to get the small update that gets the search engines to understand that activity has actually happened. So, but mostly focusing on content strategy. Also looking at things like getting deeper local links. So for example, creating content, looking at curating the opinion of local experts, for example, in the same industry or in adjacent markets, then using outreach strategies to get them to tweet out that particular sort of summary blog post of 20 local experts on interior decoration interviewed or something like that, and then having them and their own sort of social clout, using that to basically link back to the client's site, back to the pages that host that content, and using a fair amount of intelligent interlinking while that's happening as well.
That's excellent. That's great. Thank you very much for the detail on that. Lastly to Phil.
Yep, 2 words, content and reviews. For the content, I mean, I agree with all that these guys have said. I would add that the business owner somehow, some way needs to be personally involved, be it through blogging or, doing some kind of, short videos, anything. But, that's not to say that the business owner, needs to write every word or take, do all the work, his or herself for the videos. But, he or she has to be involved in, like, at least the brainstorming stages and think of, okay, what are the questions that somebody coming to our site would have? What do they want to learn? And, write a blog post on that. And I think that plays into, by the way, I think that plays into Hummingbird, because, there are a lot more sort of conversational queries, like, how do I do such and such, that Google wants to show fresh results for. So I think blogging comes in on that level. And, then, in terms of who does the legwork for the content, yeah, you can kind of farm it out, but then it needs to come back to the business owner to actually turn it into something that isn't, it isn't just a parade of keywords, and that actually, a visitor to the site might say, hey, this is kind of useful. Because, you have to keep in mind that those blog posts are, or, videos, if you prefer, those are all ways to get organic rankings. And, I think as Mike was saying a little while ago, sometimes the only way to get, if you're in the suburbs and you want to get visible in the city for a certain search term, sometimes you're out of luck in maps and you have to go organic. So that's one reason I would pay attention to content. And with reviews, I mean, I'm kind of going to ape what these guys have said. You have to have a natural means of getting them, and you can't have a reviews weekend where you ask all your customers for reviews. You have to do it slowly but surely, over time. And, you have to diversify, get them on as many sites as possible. And I mean, I sort of like the Chinese proverb that goes something like, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So, you really have to take the same approach, I think, with not only reviews but also content.
Great. Guys, thank you very much. These are all excellent insights. And nice to see a kind of crossover and kind of correlation there. That's probably very reassuring for lots of the kind of listeners. So, guys, there we have it. That's the end of the kind of sort of Q&A piece. I do have the poll results from earlier on, so I'm just going to show you those quickly. So the first question we had was, do you think the recent changes are temporary or permanent? Kind of mixed, but most people thinking that they're going to be kind of temporary, and then they will revert back to more the kind of sort of blended algorithm. So we'll have to see kind of how that changes over time. Interesting to see that most people, whether they either don't want it to be a permanent change or don't think it will be, that's kind of where they're hanging their hat. Second question was, since the recent changes, have your clients gained or lost rankings? If you've made big gains or small gains, most haven't seen that many changes, or some gains, some losses, no particular kind of shift across the board, which would, I guess, necessarily mean they would change their strategy. So looking at the answer to question 3, have you changed your strategy, your tactics since these changes? Actually, about 50% have made a change to kind of what they do, some small, some big. Whereas a number haven't, and some said, you know what, 20% said our current strategy is correct. So interesting, there's a fairly evenly split there between people who have made changes they're planning to, and who are kind of waiting to see what happens, or think they've got the kind of right mix with their strategy. So we're probably going to put together a little sort of blog post for those and push them out so that our other kind of readers can benefit from the insights. I think we had about 300 people answer those questions. It's a reasonably good sample size of kind of SEOs and SMBs there. We have a few upcoming webinars in the series. On the 6th of December, we're looking at optimization for service area businesses. We're joined by Matthew Hunt and Thomas Valentine. Then we've got 2 in January, one on mobile optimization for local, and another one on State of the Union for local search. The dates are to be kind of locked down there. In February, we're doing some optimal reporting for local SEOs, and also hoping to kind of coax Linda to do her advanced Google Plus optimization. So, there's another 5 webinars planned to come up over the next 3 months for InsideLocal, and I do hope we can see everyone there. You can keep track of InsideLocal and what's going on, both on Bright Local and on the local search forum. Those are the links to find out what's going on. And there we have it, guys. That's all for today. We are about 7 minutes over time, which actually for us is pretty good. We don't have a very good timekeeping record. So thank you firstly to everyone for listening in today, for staying with us. But also a very big thank you to our 4 panelists and speakers for giving their time and their wisdom so willingly and helpfully. I think today was really fascinating. You saw a lot of very, very kind of positive comments coming through in the question module about such great insight, so useful. Like I said earlier, having 4 people who at some points have kind of contradicted or kind of extended each other's ideas, but actually some very common threads running through in terms of what you see as being important, where you see the changes coming, and hopefully this can help people to either kind of confirm or change or mold their own strategies. Before we go, would anyone like to kind of have any sort of final sort of passing comments? Or Linda, would you like to say anything?
I just want to say a big thank you for everybody that's thanking us, because we work for you guys, and it's your enthusiasm that keeps us doing this. So thanks all for attending.
Yeah, guys, thank you very much. As I said earlier on, the video and the slide deck should be available within the next sort of 24 hours. We'll send you emails or the links so you've got them, and we hope to see you very soon on another InsideLocal webinar. Thank you, guys. Have a good day where you are.
Bye, everyone.